What's your favorite PS1 game? Do you think ChatGPT would rank it in its top 50? Well, time to find out. And I know this might sound like clickbait, but I was genuinely shocked by what took first place. 50, Driver 2. One of the first games to let you explore cities both by car and on foot, Driver 2 made its mark with adrenaline-pumping chase missions and open urban environments, even if, by today's standards, it's technically limited and visually basic. Many consider it an unofficial GTA beta before that franchise went fully 3D. For its time, it was fantastic, full of secrets and fun enough to keep any action fan glued for hours. The problem is, Driver 2 just didn't age well. It couldn't keep up with the evolution of games. Today, it's mostly a nostalgic memory. If you never played it, chances are you won't find much magic trying it now. 49th Medal of Honor Underground. The follow-up to the classic World War II FPS brought a charismatic female lead, a variety of missions, and an epic soundtrack, pushing immersion and storytelling in the genre up a notch. Honestly, this is one of the games on the list I played the least. FPS games from that era were always fun, mainly because seeing this kind of action on a console was still a novelty. But, just like Driver 2, there are much better options nowadays. In the end, Medal of Honor Underground hasn't stood the test of time either. At this point, it's more of a historical footnote for the genre than a guaranteed good time. 48. Tenchu Stealth Assassins. A stealth pioneer, Tenchu put players in the shoes of ninjas on missions full of sneaking, silent takedowns, and that feeling of truly vanishing into the night. The authentic Japanese atmosphere and the sense of being a real ninja set it apart from other games back then. I always loved this style on the PS1, especially when ninjas were involved, but I have to admit, I've never gone back to replay these games. I prefer to keep those fond memories intact rather than risk tarnishing my nostalgia. 47. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. With its dark atmosphere and deep story, Soul Reaver won over fans with exploration-based gameplay, clever puzzles, dimension shifting between the living and the dead, and a truly iconic protagonist. Here's the truth. This is the first game on the list I haven't actually played myself. I had friends who loved it and always praised its unique writing and world building, which broke the mold for the era. I kept hearing about how creative and immersive it was. Even though I never tried it, I get why Soul Reaver is so important for anyone looking for something heavier and more mature on the PS1. 46. Rayman. The original Rayman stood out with its vibrant visuals, quirky personality, and a level of challenge that surprised most platformer fans. It's remembered for inventive levels and a catchy soundtrack. If 2D platformers were the bread and butter of previous console generations on the PS1, most platformers were less ambitious but just as fun. Rayman delivered exactly that. Light, no strings attached gameplay, the kind of game you could spend a whole afternoon on and never get bored, just enjoying the challenge and the music. 45. Oddworld, Abe's Odyssey. With creative puzzles and some seriously sharp social commentary, Abe's Odyssey won over fans with its dark humor, command-based gameplay, and a one-of-a-kind industrial atmosphere. If Rayman was lighthearted fun, this one went in the opposite direction. Oddworld unsettles, provokes, and makes you think. The game's world is packed with weirdness, both in looks and mechanics, constantly throwing you into moral dilemmas and unexpected challenges. It's the kind of game that doesn't help you unwind. It keeps you on edge from start to finish, whether you're trying to rescue your buddies or escape the ruthless overseers. A true classic that still deserves a replay, especially if you're into games that dare to be different. 44. Gran Turismo 2. The ultimate racing simulator on the PlayStation 1, GT2, delivered hundreds of cars, varied tracks, and realistic handling, defining an entire generation with its deep and expansive experience for motorsport lovers. The game already grabbed your attention from the get-go, making you earn your driving licenses before even hitting the tracks. Then it was pure bliss, managing your garage, buying and tuning new cars, and competing in all kinds of races, some of them literally lasting 24 hours. It took time, patience, and a whole lot of commitment. On my personal list, this one would be ranked way higher, but this is GPT's list, so I'll respect it, even if I don't agree. 43. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. The beginning of one of the most beloved skate franchises ever, with smooth gameplay, an iconic soundtrack, and creative levels that turned the game into the gold standard for extreme sports on the PS1. This wasn't just a video game. It was a cultural milestone for an entire generation. It's hard to tell whether the game rode the wave of skateboarding's popularity or actually helped create it. One thing's for sure, at that time, everyone was into skating and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. And of course, everyone knew the songs by heart, because how could you not? 42, Ridge Racer Type 4. Seen as the high point of the series on this generation, RR4 stood out with polished visuals, a memorable soundtrack, and accessible gameplay, making it a must-play for arcade racing fans. It was Gran Turismo's direct rival, but leaned more into arcade vibes than serious simulation. A great racing game, no doubt, though in my view, it doesn't reach the same depth and longevity as its competitor. Looks like GPT disagrees, and here the game is. 41, Crash Bash. The PS1's answer to Mario Party, Crash Bash delivered fun mini-games, addictive multiplayer, and the charismatic cast from the Crash universe, guaranteeing laughs with friends. Honestly, even though it was fun, I'm not sure it would make my list. The multiplayer could be pretty addictive and good for some laughs, but looking back, a lot of the minigames were repetitive and the novelty wore off faster than expected. Still, for fans of the Crash world and group play, it was pretty much a must. Maybe not an all-time classic, but it definitely earns its spot as one of the PS1's most memorable party games. 40, Suikoden. A standout RPG known for its recruitment system of 108 characters and a gripping political narrative. Simple when it comes to graphics, but rich in choices and multiple endings, Suikoden remains a cult favorite to this day. I'll have to spoil the list a bit. I was genuinely surprised to see Suikoden here, but not Suikoden 2. To me, the real highlight between the two is the second game, which would have ranked way higher on my own list. Still, the first game has its merits, mainly for how original the concept was and for offering a storyline that really broke away from the usual JRPG formula of the time. 39, Silent Hill. Silent Hill's psychological horror changed the game with its suffocating atmosphere, groundbreaking use of fog, eerie soundtrack, and symbolism-heavy story, redefining survival horror on the PS1. If Resident Evil went down the biological route with more tangible monsters, Silent Hill leaned hard into the supernatural, tapping into psychological fears and subconscious themes. It's the kind of game that doesn't need constant jump scares to make you uncomfortable. The setting alone does the job. The result was one of the most disturbing and influential games in the genre, still seen today as the benchmark for psychological horror in gaming. 38, Final Fantasy VIII. Known for its cutting-edge visuals and the junction system, FE8 split opinions but delivered an epic story, charismatic characters, and beautiful CG cutscenes, marking a turning point for the JRPG genre. I'm biased when it comes to this game. It's hands down the Final Fantasy I've spent the most hours on. Sure, I know it has its flaws. I even made a whole video on the channel just to talk about them. But I also see what the devs were trying to do, and more than that, I see qualities in this game that, in a way, outshine its problems. If you don't like it, I honestly feel bad for you. There are plenty of critically acclaimed games out there that don't come close to this one's boldness and creativity. 37th, Dino Crisis. Created by the same team behind Resident Evil, Dino Crisis swapped zombies for dinosaurs, blending action, puzzles, and a constant sense of tension. The result is a survival horror classic with its own distinct identity. This game is amazing. It had a theme that was super hot at the time, and managed to capture, in many ways, what made Resident Evil a hit. Even though I personally prefer Dino Crisis 2 for being more fun and fast-paced, the first game is hands down more cohesive and immersive. Spoiler alert, Dino Crisis 2 didn't make the list either. Yet another GPT injustice, but we move on. 36, Street Fighter Alpha 3. One of the best versions of Street Fighter on the PS1, with a massive roster, arcade-accurate visuals, and tight gameplay. A must-have for classic fighting game fans. What really sets Alpha 3 apart is how many game modes and fighting style customizations it offers. Something few games in the genre had at the time. It's the kind of fighter that rewards players who want to dig deep, but it's still accessible enough for casual matches with friends. A total win for anyone who grew up in arcades and wanted to bring that vibe home. 35, Castlevania Chronicles. A remake of the original Castlevania, Chronicles brought updated visuals, a remixed soundtrack, and a steep difficulty curve. A tribute to the old-school platforming crowd. This game feels like a gift to the most hardcore fans, especially those who appreciate the classic Castlevania design school. precise, punishing, and unapologetically retro. Chronicles doesn't try to reinvent anything. It simply takes what already worked and cranks up the challenge, all wrapped in that signature gloomy vibe and reimagined soundtrack that hits every nostalgic nerve for longtime fans of the series. 34. Spider-Man. The Spider-Man game caught people off guard with its freedom of movement, fun combat, and original storyline. It was the first one that truly nailed the essence of the character in a video game. We're starting to see a pattern here, Mr. GPT, yet another case where the sequel is arguably better, but you chose to leave it out. Still, this is a solid game, and it introduced some clever mechanics like wall and ceiling crawling and smart web-slinging use. What it lacked in graphics polish and tight controls, it made up for with creativity worthy of the comics. A landmark for Spidey fans, even with the technical limits of the PS1. 33. Mega Man X5. Another solid entry in the X saga, with multiple endings, new bosses, and tight gameplay. Mega Man X5 kept the franchise quality high on the console. But here's where I start thinking GPT is messing with me. X5 is a good game, sure, and it's fun, but X4 is hands down the best in the series, and guess what? It didn't make the list. X5 tries to shake things up, but it doesn't quite reach the same balance in level design, boss fights, or soundtrack. Even so, for Mega Man fans, every new installment is cause for celebration. 30-second Siphon Filter 2. Espionage, action, and a plot straight out of a movie. Siphon Filter 2 improved on the first game with more varied levels, a bigger arsenal, and multiplayer, cementing the series as a genre staple. What made it stand out was how it combined stealth missions with explosive action sequences without missing a beat. The story, full of twists and turns, managed to keep players hooked all the way through, a rare feat for action games at the time. The multiplayer added even more hours of fun, especially for fans of local matches, a key step for anyone looking for something in between Metal Gear and the more traditional PS1 shooters. 31st Parasite Eve. A mix of RPG and survival horror, Parasite Eve stood out with its mature tone, real-time strategic combat, and a gripping story rooted in biotech and fear. I always say the PS1 was the console of experimentation, where tons of new ideas were thrown at the wall, and this one stuck. Parasite Eve introduced fresh mechanics like the weapon upgrade system, mixed with the suspense typical of horror games. Its more mature atmosphere and story-blending science with primal fear were an open invitation for players looking for something beyond traditional scares. Still remembered today as one of the PS1's boldest and most unique experiences. 30th Medal of Honor. The original Medal of Honor brought the intense atmosphere of World War II to the PS1 with varied missions, a focus on realism, and a memorable score by Michael Giacchino, kicking off a legendary series. But the game's real strength wasn't just placing you in historical settings. Medal of Honor was one of the first to truly aim for immersion, with detailed mission briefings, more elaborate objectives, and a clear effort not to turn everything into a mindless shooting spree. The soundtrack took the whole experience to another level, creating war movie-worthy tension. For its time, it felt almost cinematic, and it laid the groundwork for every military-themed FPS that followed. 29th Vagrant Story. A one-of-a-kind RPG with strategic combat, a heavy narrative, and a dark, moody setting. Vagrant Story stands out for its advanced visuals, clever puzzles, and mature storytelling, and it's still revered today. Another product of the PS1's experimental spirit, and this one really pushed the envelope. Tactical combat targeting specific body parts, a deep weapon customization system, and a plot that could easily pass as noir fiction, full of intrigue and morally gray characters. It's the kind of RPG that demands focus, planning, and patience, but rewards you with a singular experience. No wonder it became a cult classic. Nothing since has matched its concept or execution. 28th, Marvel vs. Capcom, Clash of Superheroes. Fast-paced brawls and a dream team of characters, Marvel vs. Capcom delivered lightning-quick fights, over-the-top combos, and massive appeal for both comic book lovers and fighting game fans. It was basically an amusement park for anyone who ever wanted to pit Ryu against Wolverine or watch Spider-Man throw down with Mega Man. The game stood out with its high-speed action, flashy graphics, and the sheer variety of possible team-ups, leading to endless combos and wild rivalries. It's the kind of fighter that even people who don't usually like fighting games could enjoy, purely for the fun and charisma. 27th, Tomb Raider. Lara Croft's debut. Tomb Raider wowed players with 3D exploration, clever puzzles, and exotic environments, becoming a game changer for third-person adventures. This one's easily among my personal favorites on the console. It probably hasn't aged all that well, but its pioneering spirit and undeniable charm still matter. I actually played it again recently and, surprisingly, it was still a good time. What Tomb Raider does best is throw you into the unknown and trust you'll figure things out without holding your hand. That sense of discovery, mystery, and puzzle solving still hits, even if the controls feel a bit stiff by today's standards. 26. Tomba, a platformer with creative mechanics and offbeat humor. Tomba won players over with its colorful world, varied quests, and gameplay that felt ahead of its time. What set it apart was the mix of traditional platforming with RPG elements and side quests, all in a universe that constantly surprised you with absurd situations and quirky characters. Tomba was a breath of fresh air for anyone who thought they'd seen it all in platformers, and it's still remembered as one of the most original experiences on the PS1. 25th, Fear Effect. Stood out for its cel-shaded graphics and cyberpunk atmosphere, Fear Effect blended action, puzzles, and a mature storyline, delivering charismatic characters and unforgettable scenes. The bold visuals grabbed you right away, but the game went far beyond looks. It offered a daring narrative for its time, and a constant sense of tension. The plot flirted with themes that games rarely touched back then, while the puzzles challenged your mind, not just your reflexes. It was one of the first games to treat the medium as something truly mature, both in style and in substance. 24th, Valkyrie Profile. An innovative RPG with a story rooted in Norse mythology and a unique combat system. Valkyrie Profile impressed with its soundtrack, multiple endings, and striking visuals. Yet another perfect example of successful experimentation on the PS1. Instead of sticking to traditional JRPG formulas, this game carved out its own structure, balancing side missions with a deep dive into each recruited character's story. The battle system, blending real-time and timed commands, remains engaging and refreshingly different to this day. The result is an experience with a distinct identity, packed with replay value and brimming with possibilities. 23rd, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It revolutionized the series with non-linear exploration and RPG elements. Symphony of the Night is still celebrated for its level design, soundtrack, and refined gameplay. And this is where I almost stopped recording the video. 23. Seriously, GPT, any halfway serious list would have this in the top 10, top 5 even. But fine, this game is living proof that greatness has nothing to do with how many dimensions a title has. It's one of the most timeless classics of its generation. To this day, it's a hit, and whenever someone mentions Metroidvania, they're basically talking about this game's legacy. If you haven't played it, fix that character flaw immediately. 22, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. Widely considered one of the best skateboarding games ever made, THPS 2 expanded on everything that made the first game shine. Iconic soundtrack, insane combos, secret characters, and huge replay value. For many, it's the peak of the franchise, and the one with the best soundtrack too. Everything in this game is an upgrade from the first, but never overdone, the kind of sequel that just works. Each new stage came with clever challenges, and with tighter controls, pulling off ridiculous trick chains became even more satisfying. THPS 2 is basically a masterclass in how to do a sequel. Improve everything, keep what already worked. 21st, Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. The constant threat of Nemesis amped up both the fear and the adrenaline. Resident Evil 3 refined the gameplay, introduced multiple endings, and firmly established Jill Valentine as a gaming icon. Above all, this is a lesson in how to turn characters into legends. Nemesis only appears in this game and is arguably the most iconic villain in the whole series, rivaling even Wesker. Jill barely showed up in other games afterward, yet still remains a fan favorite. The game strikes a solid balance between action and horror, carving out its own identity in the franchise and proving that you don't have to reinvent the wheel to create something unforgettable. 20 Mega Man Legends. A bold 3D reimagining of the franchise, Mega Man Legends blended action, exploration, and RPG elements. It won fans over with its charming setting, lovable characters, and light-hearted, fun storyline. The real achievement here wasn't trying to simply drag the classic formula into 3D, but creating an entirely new experience, with dungeon crawling, NPC interactions, and even a completely different upgrade system. Even with its basic graphics and somewhat clunky controls, the game had its own identity, full of adventure and humor that kept the spirit of the series alive. It's still a cult favorite, especially because there's really nothing else quite like it in the Mega Man universe. 19. Tactics. Ogre. Let us cling together. Deep turn-based strategy, a mature story, and multiple endings. Tactics Ogre impressed with its tactical complexity, moral choices, and a visual style that helped define the tactical RPG genre. What really set it apart was how seriously it treated your decisions. There's none of that easy good versus evil split you saw in most 90s RPGs. Every battle required careful planning, and every choice carried weight, affecting the story and the characters' paths. No wonder it went on to influence other genre-defining games like Final Fantasy Tactics. This is the kind of game that challenges both your brain and your conscience, proving that tactical RPGs can absolutely be dense, serious, and mature. 18. Digimon World. A mix of RPG, simulation, and adventure, Digimon World broke new ground by letting players train, evolve, and battle with Digimons in an open-world setting, delivering both challenge and nostalgia for fans of the anime. I've talked about this game before, and I'll keep talking about it. It's amazing. Its unique mechanics might scare off some players at first, but trust me, it's worth pushing through. Everything about this game, from the training system to the battles, is unlike anything else. It somehow balances complexity with casual play, offering something fun for beginners while still being tough enough to challenge veterans. It's the kind of game design that wins me over every time. What's most impressive is how it juggles so many genres without losing focus, creating a truly one-of-a-kind experience. 17th. Crash Bandicoot. PlayStation's mascot began his journey with challenging levels, eye-catching graphics for the time, and loads of quirky charm. Crash Bandicoot played a key role in making the console a household name. While most platformers of the era played it safe, Crash stepped up to the plate and delivered, becoming the face of the brand. The first game can be a bit uneven in terms of difficulty, especially if you're going for 100%, but it's still a blast to play. The level design was clever, the stages had personality, and the soundtrack was unforgettable. It became synonymous with PlayStation in a matter of months, and it's not hard to see why. 16. Legend of Mana. With stunning 2D visuals, a magical soundtrack, and a world-building system, Legend of Mana stands out as one of the most artistic and poetic RPGs on the PS1. Instead of following a traditional linear plot, the game let players build their own journey through independent quests and storylines that weave together in surprising ways. The art direction is a visual feast, mixing colors and forms that feel straight out of a fairy tale. The gameplay, centered on experimentation and freedom, might throw off players expecting a typical JRPG, but for those looking for something different, it's a treasure. To this day, it's held up as a shining example of creativity and bold design in the era. 15. Crash Bandicoot 2: Cortex Strikes Back. The sequel improved everything: graphics, gameplay, level variety, and mechanics. Crash 2 cemented the franchise as one of the console's favorites. This second entry refined nearly every aspect of the original, from mechanics to visuals. The difficulty was better balanced but still challenging. Secrets were more cleverly hidden, and the hub world was way more engaging, making this a much stronger game overall. Personally, I still prefer Crash 3, but GPT picked these two and left the third one out. Go figure. That said, Crash 2 is practically a textbook example of how to make a proper sequel. 14th. Gran Turismo. The pioneer of racing simulators on the PS1, Gran Turismo wowed players with its realism, huge car roster, and iconic soundtrack, redefining the genre. Another reminder that GPT probably never played a PS1 in its life. The second game is a clear improvement in every way. Doesn't mean the first isn't great, doesn't mean it's not iconic, doesn't mean it lacks legacy, but the second is better GPT. Gran Turismo laid the foundation, but it's hard to argue for it over the refinement seen in its successor. It earns points for innovation, but it didn't take long to feel outdated. 13th. Crash Team Racing. The PS1's answer to Mario Kart, CTR, brought chaotic races, iconic characters, fun power-ups, and addictive multiplayer, quickly becoming a kart racing classic. It's a good game, no doubt, fun, gave the mascot a new genre to shine in. But 13th place feels like a stretch, especially considering Crash 3 didn't even make the list. And honestly, I still prefer Mario Kart. That said, CTR deserves credit for carving out its own identity, offering a solid adventure mode, a distinctive drift mechanic, and a multiplayer that kept friends locked in for hours. One of the console's biggest hits, even if it's not my go-to for kart racing. 12th, Spyro the Dragon. A colorful and charismatic 3D platformer, Spyro charmed players with its open worlds, fun exploration, lovable characters, and vibrant soundtrack by Stuart Copeland. The game gave off a rare sense of freedom for platformers at the time, letting you explore vast areas, uncover secrets, and take different approaches to each level. The protagonist's charm, combined with the cartoony visuals and the relaxed mission flow, made Spyro appealing to both kids and adults. The progression system encouraged full exploration without ever becoming tedious. A masterclass in 3D platforming design that still holds up as a reference today. 11th, Final Fantasy Tactics. A strategy masterpiece, FFT delivered a rich political plot, deep gameplay, diverse job classes, and unforgettable battles. It's hailed as one of the greatest tactical RPGs ever made. What really stands out is how mature the writing is, ditching traditional fantasy cliches in favor of themes like corruption, betrayal, and class conflict. The battle depth and job system allow for endless combinations, making each playthrough feel unique. It's not a game that holds your hand, but those who commit are rewarded with one of the most complete experiences of the entire generation. 10th, Spyro, Year of the Dragon. The third entry in the series took everything to the next level. Bigger worlds, multiple playable characters, creative mini-games, and loads of humor, securing Spyro's place as a 3D platforming staple. At this point, I'm starting to suspect that as much as I like Spyro, GPT likes it even more. 2 games in the top 15 is kind of sus. But to be fair, Year of the Dragon pushed Insomniac's creativity to the limit, delivering the widest range of missions, power-ups, and even alternate characters, each with their own unique abilities. The minigames were a show in themselves, giving you a break from the classic collectathon formula and adding variety to every world. I'm not sure it deserved this much spotlight, but there's no denying the affection this game earned over the years. 9th, Tekken 3. Widely regarded as one of the best fighting games of all time, Tekken 3 delivered jaw-dropping graphics, a massive roster, fluid combos, and addictive gameplay, dominating multiplayer sessions in the 90s. Like I said before, the PS1 was the console of experimentation. Fighting games didn't just add a third dimension, they added weapons, transformations, new modes, and tons of unlockables. Tekken 3 became the blueprint. On top of its tight, technical combat, it had modes like Tekken Force and Tekken Ball, which gave it an absurd amount of replay value. Unlocking hidden characters was practically a rite of passage, and local multiplayer forged or destroyed friendships one combo at a time. 8. Final Fantasy IX. A love letter to the golden age of RPGs, Final Fantasy IX captivated players with charming characters, a magical art style, and an epic soundtrack, all wrapped in a story that balanced drama and lightheartedness beautifully. A true RPG masterpiece that maybe didn't get the attention it deserved simply because it launched at the end of the PS1's life cycle, with the PS2 already on the horizon. Still, it's a phenomenal game. Immersive, gorgeous, and full of little details and callbacks to earlier entries in the franchise. It's the most nostalgic Final Fantasy of them all, both in look and tone, with a cohesive world and lovable characters from start to finish. For anyone into RPGs, it's a heartfelt return to roots, without sacrificing the polish the series had reached by then. 7th, Resident Evil 2. Bigger, scarier, and smarter. With 2 protagonists, intertwining narratives, varied environments, and relentless tension, Resident Evil 2 earned its spot as a survival horror legend. For me, it's the best RE game on the PS1, but GPT disagrees. Everything was expanded. More scenarios, more weapons, unforgettable enemies, and a story that somehow managed to surprise you every time you played it. The dual campaigns of Leon and Claire gave the game massive replay value, and the police station setting became a textbook example of good level design in the genre. Even today, RE2 holds up and continues to influence remakes and modern horror titles alike. 6th, Xenogears. A deep RPG with a philosophical storyline, innovative combat, and giant mechs. Xenogears is a cult classic praised for its complex narrative and mature themes, standing out among its JRPG peers. The second half of the game really loses steam, with budget cuts and large chunks of story delivered almost entirely through text. But even with those flaws, the impact of its themes is massive. Religion, politics, psychology, existential dread, it tackles stuff most games still don't dare touch. The battle system mixes classic commands with martial arts combos and mech fights, keeping things dynamic and fresh. Despite its imperfections, it's essential for anyone looking for more than just another save-the-world kind of RPG. Fifth, Spyro 2, Ripto's Rage. Expanded the Spyro universe with larger stages, new characters, and refined mechanics. Highlights include the humor, the challenges, and the freedom of exploration. At this point, it's clear GPT really loves Spyro. Don't get me wrong, I like it too, but this is getting a bit excessive. Still, Spyro 2 improves on almost everything. The hub worlds are bigger, the side characters play a stronger role, and the game leans into a wide variety of tasks, all while keeping the tone light and fun. The sense of reward is constant, and the difficulty curve is far better balanced than in the first game. It's still one of the best examples of 3D platforming on the PS1, but 3 games in the top 15, that's a stretch. Fourth, Metal Gear Solid. Revolutionized stealth gameplay by combining cinematic storytelling, innovative mechanics, and iconic characters. Metal Gear Solid is a benchmark for creativity and narrative depth. It wasn't just an action game, it was practically a cinematic experience, blending espionage, political commentary, tech speculation, and heavy drama. The use of meta elements, like switching controller ports, reading your memory card, or breaking the fourth wall, showed just how far ahead of his time Kojima really was. The unforgettable voice acting and cutscenes helped set the standard for storytelling in modern games. It's still cited as a key influence on dozens of franchises, and for good reason. Third, Resident Evil. The game that redefined horror, oppressive atmosphere, clever puzzles, and constant tension. Resident Evil is a landmark, both for the PlayStation and for gaming history in general. The Spencer Mansion became synonymous with fear, with every hallway posing the same question. Do I open that door or not? Fixed camera angles, limited saves via ink ribbons, and a sparse soundtrack created a tension that never let up. It's hard to overstate the game's impact. It essentially coined the term survival horror and paved the way for an entire generation of psychological and action horror titles. Second, Final Fantasy VII. One of the most influential games of all time, FFepper brought groundbreaking graphics, an emotional story, and unforgettable characters, becoming the definitive RPG of the PS1 era. This is my favorite game, maybe my favorite ever. More than just a title, it was a turning point, a cultural landmark, a genre-defining icon. It transcended its generation and is still absolutely worth playing today. And if the graphics bother you that much, there's a whole modding community now, so stop making excuses. The emotional weight of the story and the impact of its twists still hit hard, even if you already know the spoilers. First, Chrono Cross, a JRPG masterpiece. Chrono Cross stands out for its intricate plot, unforgettable soundtrack, and innovative combat system, one of the most celebrated titles of the PlayStation era. Now here's where GPT really threw me off. I actually asked it this question multiple times just to see if the answer stayed the same, and it didn't. Chrono Cross is a great game, sure, but number 1? That's pushing it. The story takes risks few others do, diving into existential themes, time travel, and the consequences of player choice. The element-based battle system and massive cast of characters were bold design moves, and the soundtrack is still hailed as one of the best in gaming. Still, it's a divisive title. Some say it even surpasses Chrono Trigger. Others argue it never comes close. Either way, it's a must-play RPG that deserves a high spot. But first place? That's GPT logic for you. That's it. That's the list. Was there any major omission? Are there any on here that don't deserve a spot? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you next time.